This is a trigger warning for the following episode since we speak about mental health, so we will be speaking about some sensitive topics. This is also a disclaimer that we use some dark humour and bad words as well, so if this is not the podcast for you, you can scroll on, but if this sounds good to you, come in. Okay, so Claire Sugden, thank you so much for coming. I know, how far did you come actually?
Castle Rock, so what, about 40 minutes, 45 minutes, yeah.
I really appreciate you taking the time to come out.
No, it's my pleasure, I really enjoy it.
I've been so excited. I'm excited for every guest, but particularly excited for this one.
Thank you.
So for anyone that doesn't know Claire Sugden, give us a wee intro on who you are and what you do.
Okay, I am an MLA in the Northern Ireland Assembly. I'm the Assembly's only independent MLA. I've been in that role for about 11 years now. And yeah, I suppose I never really intended on becoming a politician. I was always interested in politics. I had worked for a politician, but it was never my intention to be in front of the camera, if you like. I always enjoyed doing the stuff behind the scenes, the policy, the prep. And life took hold as it normally does, and circumstances led to me being co-opted as an MLA about 11 years ago, and here we are, and everything that has happened within that 11 years as well. You know, it's unexpected. Some people might know me as the former Minister of Justice. I was in that role for about 5 minutes about 8 years ago.
Oh, really? 5 minutes?
Well, not quite, but no. I would like to have been in it a lot longer than I was. Okay. I was appointed in May 2016, and due to the Northern Ireland Executive collapsing that January, I lost that role.
Right, okay. So you are not here to speak about politics today, thank God, because I know nothing about politics. My passion is mental health and candles, and that's all I know anything about. Politics, I'm not very good at.
Yeah. But can I suggest that the fact that you're talking about mental health is politics?
I suppose so, because we're always discussing that, and it is always coming up, and that's one of your 5 key points, isn't it?
It would be. You know, I think in Northern Ireland people think politics is the usual nonsense when they switch on their TV, and it's, you know, the orange and green and flags and storming, and, you know, is it up, is it down? But for me, politics is about public services, and it's about people. You know, that's what politics means.
Yes.
You know, so when people say to me, I know nothing about politics, you know, if you're living in Northern Ireland, if you have a life, if you have issues with public services, if you attend, you know, if you use public services, everyone does, then you do know about politics.
Oh, well, I suppose when you put it that way,
And I would actually say one of the most critical issues in Northern Ireland is mental health. Yes. Because we are a post-conflict society in Northern Ireland, and it's not just the people who were there and involved in the troubles that are impacting on that, it's the intergenerational trauma.
Yes.
So, you know, families of people that, you know, never knew the troubles, which is a good thing, but we've never really kind of addressed that. So they're feeling that within their families and within their communities, and I think it's really significant. So the work you're doing is more than what the government's doing.
Yes. So this is why I started it.
Yeah.
Because I have never got unfortunately never had any help from the government for my mental health issues at the time. So it was people like me who were doing things like this that I got the most help from. So I thought, you know, when I am better, I will try and be of service then to people. Yeah. But coming back to you, I actually came across you by accident because, remember Sean Lynchs, you remember his case? I do. He was sitting here a few weeks ago, and I read out a statement that you said at the time. You were Justice Minister at the time of Sean's incident. I know we can't talk too much about it because you're not Justice Minister anymore, but at the time you did say that you would make sure that there would be plans put in place that this wouldn't happen to any vulnerable prisoners going forward. Is there, to your knowledge now, anything put in place to prevent anything like that happening again?
I think we certainly need to do more. I think within prisons we need to recognise that 2/3 of the population have a mental health or addiction issue, and we need to understand why. Ultimately, it's what leads most people to offend and find themselves within the system. I'm a great believer that no one's born bad. I think it's they're a product of their circumstances, their upbringing, and the things that happen to them. And ultimately, it's an outworking of trauma maybe in their lives and mental health issues. And, I think when someone does what happened to Sean, I think it's a desperate cry for help.
Awful, yeah.
And, I think we do need to do more. And, certainly if we're looking at it from a criminal justice perspective, prison isn't there to punish people.
Yeah.
You know, the limiting of their freedom is the sentence. It's there to rehabilitate them.
Yes.
It's there to help them rebuild their lives. And that includes their mental well-being. It includes their opportunities for employment when they leave, building on their relationships. All those things that if we don't fix, they will ultimately reoffend, and then no one, you know, is helped in that respect. So I think we've a long way to go.
Okay.
And I think we need to do more in respect of prisoners and how we look after them and their health, because unfortunately we will maybe see things, you know, like this happening again, and that's not acceptable. You know, when people take their own lives or they do, you know, what he did, it's something that.
So Sean actually did say himself that you know, the judges are just putting boys into McGabry and thinking that they're helping them, but they're really not. McGabry, in his own words and his personal experience, was awful for him. There was no help. He was failed. Have you ever been to McGabry to see what way they work and in other prisons in the Northwest as well?
Yeah, no, I as minister I would have attended the prisons regularly, and I would have spoken to both the inmates and staff as well, and I think we definitely do need to do more in relation to how we, I suppose, we rehabilitate people. But it's a conversation around the wider criminal justice system.
Yeah.
You know, realistically, if you're putting someone into prison for less than a year, you're not helping them. There's not enough time to help them.
Yeah.
So what are we achieving with that? And you know, our prison population is increasing, you know, day on day, and again, there's not enough resources to really help those people to change their behaviours, to change their, you know, their lifestyles, and you know, I'm not surprised to hear that. But it's the whole wider system.
Yeah.
You know.
So what exactly is the role of the Justice Minister?
Well, again, the role of any politician, of any minister in government, is to improve public services. So the Minister of Justice in Northern Ireland would be primarily responsible for the courts, for the criminal justice system. So the point in which an alleged offence is suspected to have happened, the police come into that, they gather as much information as possible to prove the crime, if you like.
Yes.
Then they'll prepare a file, they'll take that forward to the Public Prosecution Service, and then they will decide if there's enough evidence to prove that that crime has happened in court. If they believe that there's a fair chance that that could happen, it'll then go to court, and then it'll either go through trial or, you know, or that system. If there's a conviction found in the court, the judge will then sentence that individual, and that may be custody depending on the nature of the offence. It may be community service, it may be a suspended sentence, that type of thing. So the Justice Minister's kind of responsible for all of that.
Okay.
They're not technically responsible for the police. They do give the police their budget.
Right.
Policing in Northern Ireland is separate from the Justice Minister because of the kind of politics around here.
Yeah.
So they're directly held to account by the policing board. But to me, the Justice Minister should still have an interest in the police, because the police are there to keep communities safe, or, you know, that they're there to, as I say, respond to crimes, that type of thing. Gosh, it was a big remit. So it was an interesting role. You know,
you were quite young when you were Justice Minister.
I was
what age?
29.
So huge responsibility.
Yeah.
For anyone there, doesn't matter what age. How did you deal with the stress? Were you like ever going, I can do this? Like, what am I doing?
I suppose the way I've always approached any role is that the job's there to be done. You learn it. No one will ever have experience of being the Justice Minister unless they were the Justice Minister. You know, my predecessor, he was, you know, he didn't have any experience in justice. He wasn't a lawyer, he wasn't a solicitor, he wasn't a judge. So he had as much, you know, knowledge and information going into the role as I did. And I suppose the only difference is that he was older than I was. Yes. You know, and to me, you approach it like you would any other. You go in, you understand the remit, you take it forward, and you try and do a good job. And that's what I hope to do. And I don't think there was anyone else that could have done a better or worse job than me. You know? So why not? So, you know, I accepted the responsibility. Yes, there was times when you were, you know, lying in bed with my husband and thinking, oh my God,
I'm really needed and responsible right now.
Yeah, and I think it's, if anything, it's the weight of the responsibility, because as a politician, I do take my role very seriously in trying to improve the services and trying to help people. And, you know, when we have cases like Sean, you know, that does weigh on me, you know, because that at the heart of all of this are human beings.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think for me, it's about trying to improve the outcomes for them. And if I'm failing in doing that, I think that was what,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't the job that scared me or intimidated me. It was the ability to actually do anything. And I think that's why whenever I lost the role so unexpectedly, if you like, it frustrated me because I had so many ideas and so many things that I wanted to do to try and improve things here in Northern Ireland. And the one thing that I'm actually really proud of is that I really led the conversation on domestic abuse in Northern Ireland.
Yes, I noticed.
Prior to me coming into that role, we never really talked about it, despite the fact that we had 35,000 incidents reported to the police every year.
Yeah.
And it was really important for me to really shine a light, if you like, on that darkness, and to at least instigate legislation. And that's what I did. I fortunately wasn't able to take that forward myself because I lost the role, but it has now subsequently come into law, and we have legislation against it which we hadn't had previously. Brilliant. So if I do nothing else in my career and life, that's the one thing I'm really, really proud of, and we're still having those conversations because we still have an awful lot more to do in that space.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, well,
personally, it's something that I have personal with. So when I read that about you, I was like, what a woman. And also your list of achievements, I was scrolling. I had no time to, because there's been that many, and you're only 2 years older than me as well.
Okay.
So I was also sitting going, I'm a wee bit behind here in life. No. But you honestly are doing amazing, and you can tell you really are for the people and for women as well. We all love a woman that loves and empowers women, so that's great. Yeah. Also, when I was Googling you, again, I came across you through Sean, but I also came across a newspaper article about your postnatal anxiety, very open and very honest, and then straight away, that was me straight in. I was like, oh my God, she has her story. She's very vocal and open and honest about it. So how was becoming a mum for you?
Yeah, I must admit it's the greatest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
I've had a turbulent number of years, probably since I lost the Justice Ministry, but other things had happened as well. Okay. And I suppose having Indy, my baby, has really given me joy back to my life. I really love being a mum.
Aye.
That said, I didn't really make my pregnancy known publicly. I didn't hide it. I was going to my antenatal appointments the same as anyone else.
And why was that? Why were you?
I've never been, I didn't feel that, I needed to share my scan picture on social media or anything. Okay. I didn't hide my pregnancy, but I certainly didn't make an announcement in relation to that. And if people knew, yes, I had the conversation about it. If they didn't know, they were, I suppose, pleasantly surprised whenever I shared, that newborn picture.
Yes, surprise. That was a surprise.
Yeah. And, I didn't show when I was pregnant.
Okay.
And maybe it's because I'm tall and, carry a bit of weight anyway.
You are so tall. What height are you?
I'm 5'11".
5'11", I'm so tall.
So people didn't really know I was pregnant because they didn't see it. Yes. If you like, a few people I think suspected, but they were good enough not to.
And no bother to you working away as normal, still pregnant, growing a human, doing what you do, smashing life.
When you're an MLA, and it's only recently that things have changed in relation to that, it doesn't really matter if you're sick, if you're pregnant, if you have a baby, the job continues. And certainly after giving birth and announcing that I was pregnant, people who were emailing me, congratulations, Claire, can you help me with this issue?
And you're like, I'm kind of busy here.
Yeah, I'll wait till she's sleeping.
But they don't sleep also.
Yeah, exactly.
So when did you notice the postnatal anxiety kind of starting for you, and what did that look like for you?
Well, I suppose throughout my pregnancy, I had a somewhat complicated pregnancy. I had gestational diabetes. Okay. Toward the end of my pregnancy, it seemed that she wasn't growing in the womb. So there was a suggestion that, Claire, we might need to get her out a wee bit sooner because, she seems to be sort of plateauing in terms of the size that we're measuring. So I think the last month of my pregnancy was quite difficult. Right. Because I was worried. I was concerned. I thought, there was something going on here. I had to go into hospital, get steroids, that type of thing. And when you find yourself in the maternity unit in Antrim and there's babies all around you and you're concerned that maybe I'm not going to have that experience. I think that was probably the start of my worries.
So it was before the birth even that kind of started for you?
Yes, but I think the anxiety itself didn't really manifest maybe until the summer. So she was born at the end of May, so it was probably, I think, the peak of it maybe around August.
Right, okay.
And I think it was just that concern, and she came out and she was perfect. She was a healthy weight, and all the concerns that they had previous, were nothing to worried about, but you don't know that at the time.
Yeah.
And I think then, and it was my health visitor that ultimately noticed it in me.
Okay.
Where, I was getting really heightened about maybe a little red dot on her arm, or, and I was like, what's that? And she goes, no, look, Claire, it's fine. And I says, are you sure? And, and she was saying to me, how are you feeling about this? And I says, I'm just not sure. Maybe I need to go to the doctor. And I think there was just this sense that things weren't right.
Yeah.
And even in hindsight, looking back on it now, I don't really recognise who I was.
It was like a different person, more or less.
I feel like I was a different person back then. And even walking down the stairs with her, I was having visions that she was, a newborn who, could barely turn herself over.
Yeah.
Was going to jump out of my arms. And down the stairs.
Yes.
If we were out in the car. I was having thoughts that we were going to crash, and I could feel myself, when my husband was driving. Sometimes that happens anyway.
Yeah.
And I couldn't sit still. It was a really, really uncomfortable experience for me to be out in the car, to be walking downstairs. Even if my husband was carrying, the baby, I was, always on edge. And it just really got to a point where I couldn't function because I was so anxious all of the time.
I have had so many messages asking who is recording the podcast for me, and it is Steve Owen's Visuals. Now, I approached Steve last year with the concept of the Mental Health and Me podcast. He absolutely loved the idea, and because it's self-funded by myself, he gave me massive discounts. He is going over and beyond for me, but not just me, all of his clients. His work is so professional, and he's just great. So Steve Owen's Visuals is your guy.
And I suppose for me, it was a bit of a surreal experience. I didn't recognise it as a problem because when you're told, when you speak to others, it's like, it's just newborn worries. And, every mother has anxiety. And, even the postman was saying to me, Claire, you're worried for the rest of my life. I have to take my 27-year-old off to a concert. I'm terrified.
But it's completely different when it is interrupting your daily life and affecting your daily life. Then that's when you start to think, okay, this is a problem. Yeah. So I can really relate to what you're saying. Mm-hmm. I thought that it was only me going through this because no one was talking about it. Yeah. But I remember one time I was walking over the Peace Bridge here in the city, and I had him in the buggy, and I thought, imagine I let my hands go. And he would just go, and it was just this thought, and I was like, why am I thinking? And it really disturbed me, the thought. Yeah. And I had different thoughts, throughout the first few weeks, and I was like, I was terrified to tell anyone because I thought they would say, right, let's take her baby off her because this is not normal. But now I know that it is totally normal. Yeah. And how I knew that was when I visited a friend of mine who had just had a baby, 2 weeks old, and she said, Jenna, I keep having this vision of, imagine I threw her on the fire. Yeah. And she was like, I know this sounds mad. And I go, thank God you said that because I had that as well. And so that opened this discussion of it's totally normal to have these feelings and it's totally normal to seek help for them. So what did the help look like for you? What did you do for the help?
Yeah, well, the health visitor, probably the same with yourself, they go through like a questionnaire.
Yes.
And I suppose where I was really reluctant to seek the help is because I didn't think anxiety in itself was an issue. So we hear an awful lot about postnatal depression. And if anything, I was nearly the opposite of depressed. I was elated. I was nearly overwhelmed with love for this baby that I couldn't cope with those feelings, to the point then that my feelings were almost spilling over into anxiety. So I wasn't unhappy. I was able to get out of bed in the morning. I just felt this. I just felt like I was in this bubble of love for this child. So I was, I didn't feel depressed at all.
So you were like, no, I don't have postnatal depression, so there's nothing wrong with me.
There's nothing wrong with me.
Duna Doherty was here, remember, a few weeks ago, and she was saying that she had postnatal anxiety as well. And I suppose this is a new topic that we're coming across. It doesn't have to be postnatal depression. It can be postnatal anxiety. And it's starting to become more open now because people are starting to talk about it more as well. So pre having your baby, Andy, did you have any anxiety in general, like general anxiety, would that have been something
Yeah.
constant in your life anyway?
Yeah, I would say certainly since I was a teenager, I've always had a low level anxiety, and people wouldn't recognize it in me. You know, I'm a public figure. I stand up, I make speeches, you know,
Yeah.
to a room full of, you know, of people. But you know, I'm breaking it inside.
Aye.
You know, and I may look confident, and I may look that I've got it together, but you know what, I'm really nervous. And I do have to work every day at being Claire Sugden MLA.
Yes.
Because that does come with a lot of public attention, and you know that scares the hell out of me, if I'm
And
going to be
that's
honest.
really lovely to hear as well, because I'm also breaking it every single day.
Yeah.
And again, I talk about this every single guest. I talk about social media. When you're scrolling on social media, you're like, oh my God, they have it so together. I wish I was like that. People have said it to me, oh my God, you've got everything. And I'm like, oh, I'm kind of dying inside also. But we're able to put on a front. So brings me back to having a baby, and this is why I thought this is how I knew there was something, thought there was something wrong with me. When I was scrolling and seeing new mommies out and about and doing all these yoga and baby classes, and I was like, why can't I do that? Like, why am I struggling? And you know, I am struggling, but I wasn't. It was the social media, perfect pictures, making me feel like I was. So I will always say in every single podcast, the importance of how negative social media is in general for everything that we do. New mothers, you know, everyone. Did you find yourself comparing 100%. Yourself as well?
Maybe not even the comparisons, but I did find that social media very much fed my anxiety.
Yes.
So, you know, you were scrolling through TikTok, and then you were maybe coming across something that was familiar. You know, or was related to newborn, and TikTok is incredibly intelligent. You know, so it nearly knows the stages of your child's life. You know, from being pregnant to newborn to being 3 months, 4 months, because it's nearly showing you the videos because of the algorithm. But clearly I was focusing on the negative videos, so the RSV, the sickness. You know, this is what you need to do if your baby did this and did that. So it was feeding the things that could have went wrong, but were really unlikely.
It was just giving you more things to worry about.
Yes, it was.
More than anything.
Absolutely. And you know, whenever I recognised my anxiety eventually, and I got the help for that, one of the things that I consciously had to do was stop scrolling on TikTok.
Yes.
And if I did scroll on TikTok, if it was to do with the baby, if it was to do with, you know, and I just going past to almost physically change the algorithm so that it wasn't kind of feeding into that anxiety. You know, I recognise social media as a positive thing in a lot of ways, but equally it consumes too much of our life.
Yeah, it does.
And it's not real life.
No.
You know, and you know, even what you're saying, you know, around the mother and toddler groups and all of that, there is a pressure to feel like you have to take part in those things, and you know, that's what new mummies do. And you know, it has to be this, you know, way that you feed your baby, or you know, and to be honest, that's not realistic, you know. And again, this is all with hindsight. That, you know, my wee girl is nearly 21 months actually today.
Oh, very good.
And you know, she, looking back, you know, she grew up. She's thriving.
Yeah.
You know, the world didn't fall apart because I didn't do something that people on social media are doing. You know, and I think we all have to take pressure off ourselves. Generally, but equally take pressure off ourselves, you know, from the fake world that social media is.
And she's very lucky to have you as her mommy as well. So protective, so strong. You're giving her a brilliant example of what a strong woman looks like as well. Do you feel that perhaps the postnatal anxiety that you went through would potentially maybe put you off having another child?
In the kind of in the immediate kind of aftermath of it, I would have said yes. But now, however many months on, no, I think, no, I don't think it would put me off.
No,
because I've come through it.
Overcome,
and, you know, I think that's the scariest part in all of this. You know, that was completely new to me. I'd never experienced, you know, postnatal anxiety. I'd never experienced having a child or any of those things. But I suppose as you kind of move through it and you work through those challenges, you recognise you do come out the other end. And, you know, and that's the hope in all of it. And I suppose that's why I really wanted to share my story around it. And it was incredible, Jenna, you know, the number of women, and particularly professional women, that contacted me and said, you know, I'm a corporate lawyer, and I went through exactly what you went through. And she said, I couldn't speak to anyone about it because, you know, women in those types of jobs anyway,
are not allowed to be vulnerable.
No, they have to pretend to be the man to succeed. And, I think now we need to start moving into a world that it's not just about women getting those jobs, it's about women being women in those jobs. And that means being mums, it means being vulnerable, it means being feminine, it's all of those, things that it is about being a woman or not being a woman. And, that's how we kind of make the world more equal, that we're all allowed to be who we are in the spaces together, you know, and it just, I was really touched by the fact that group of women in particular, says, you were the Minister of Justice in Northern Ireland and you were able to, to come out with it. And she says, now I feel like I can actually say that
you've opened the door.
I hope so.
To show that, she can be a strong, independent woman. And she can also suffer postnatal anxiety and you can come out the other side.
Yeah.
Did you need to take any medication for that time?
Yeah. They put me on an antidepressant called escitalopram.
Does that start with the letter C?
Or S? The brand name's called Cipralex.
No,
so it's ESCIT. So
it's a new one.
I think it is for anxiety as well.
Right.
So it's for depression, but it also treats anxiety specifically. And yeah, great. Honestly,
beneficial for you then.
Very much so. I suppose for me, what I would describe it provides you with the space for you to kind of accept where you are and then start dealing with it.
I think because I am on medication as well for OCD, I think what it does is dampens it for you, so you're able to continue on your daily life. It is still kind of there, but not as heightened.
Absolutely,
so it is a good thing.
I'm a believer that if you have a sore head, you take a painkiller.
Yeah, 100%.
And if you need something to help with your mental health, take that. I don't think it is the solution in itself.
No.
I think it gives you space to help you work through that solution so that things aren't as heightened.
Yeah.
And, certainly for me, it works. Everybody will be different. And, it's if you think that's what you need, go and chat to your doctor and they can talk about your individual needs.
Because some people would be fearful of saying they take medication. I'm always very open because I have had OCD since I was 8, I would say. Diagnosed at 16 and then on medication since I'm 21. So I'm kind of been on it lifelong and it has worked for me.
Yeah.
So I will always say it's worked for me, but also not just that. I've had to do a whole lot of other stuff and you just can't rely on medication and lying in the house and hope that you will get better.
Absolutely. And I agree with that. Years ago, before I got into politics, actually when I was studying politics at university, I worked in pharmacy. I was a pharmacy technician.
Okay.
So I see who takes medication and it's everybody and anyone. And it is there to help with an illness. And we are lucky in this world that we have things like that can do that. And by all means, if it's for you and your doctor agrees with that, then don't be fearful of it. It's, as I said, you would take a painkiller if you have a sore head. So give yourself that space to heal again. And sometimes that's medication, sometimes it's counselling. Answer to yourself and only yourself.
That's brilliant. I love that. Thank you for being so open as well about it. It's open doors. It's, we're talking about it now as well. Going back to you having a toddler, she's walking, running.
She's
messing,
raking
ball.
Yeah.
How do you juggle being a mum to a toddler and being an independent MLA at the same time?
Yeah. It's tough. But you know what? I'm just giving myself a break about it.
Okay.
Being a politician is you could be all things to everyone. And realistically, the public, probably will still want more. And that's fine. That's the nature of, the role. But I think you have to recognise your boundaries.
Yes.
And even prior, to having Indy, I remember when I started out, I was, young-eyed and bushy-tailed and, was accepting everything and going to all the events and was out every night and was out every weekend. But, that quickly becomes a physical burden, on you insofar as you get tired. Your personal life takes a kind of a back seat to your role. And, to an extent, you kind of lose who you are a little bit. And, I think in my own journey as being a politician, being in the public eye, I need to recognise that I'm more than a politician. I am now a mummy, and actually that's the thing that I prioritise above all else.
And that's your number one job.
Absolutely. It doesn't mean that my job is suffering because of that. It means that I've got more
cut-off times.
And 100%. I feel like I personally feel that since becoming a mum, I'm a better politician.
Really?
Yeah, I do, because my perspective has changed about what's important.
Okay.
And, you know, when I'm thinking about public policy, I'm thinking about my daughter and her future. And I'm thinking about what I want to create for her and the generations ahead of me. And I really feel it now.
Okay.
You know, so the things that could hurt my child, you know, I feel it here.
Yes.
Whereas previously I obviously didn't know any better to feel in that way. So I feel like I've got maybe my spark back a little bit, and my drive back, and I do directly put that down to being a mother.
Okay, that's brilliant.
Yeah, so, you know, when people talk about, you know, even just the juggling and all of that, yes, there's time management constraints and it's chaos, and, you know, but you find a way to make it work, because ultimately this job is about improving people's lives, and for me, that's my daughter in the first and foremost, you know, so.
Do you ever get mum guilt?
I haven't, if I'm honest.
Oh, that's good.
Because I think maybe because I did go through anxiety, maybe because I am on a bit of a journey in relation to my own mental health and what I need to do. I'm trying to give myself a break.
Yeah.
And I think we're all just doing our best.
And I think the fact that you have spoke there about setting boundaries is so good. Whereas mental health for me is quite new, and I also have my other business which is established, and I'm running, you know, well doing that. But mental health I'm finding myself on the laptop and my son's beside me in bed, and I'm sitting trying to go, you know, juggle both. And then when he falls asleep, I'm like, oh my God, you know, I've worked the whole night. I didn't really get, you know, to spend much time with him. So at the minute, I am going through a wee bit of mom guilt, but hopefully, you know, over time I'm able to find the balance as well, we're all trying to do.
Someone recently said to me, and I found it really helpful, even just, and it's only in the last couple of weeks, but if you start to feel guilty about something, ask yourself, but what am I guilty of? Like, what are you guilty of?
Working too much.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
I think that's what I mean. I need to set. I have my boundaries set for my House of Sense business, but for this one, there's no boundaries as of yet, because I am researching, watching YouTube, and it's kind of non-stop. But that also means to me that I'm passionate, and I'm loving what I am doing.
I don't be guilty about that.
Yeah, no, I know. So this is my hobby. Like people go, "Oh, what's your hobbies?" And I'll be like, "Work." Work is my hobby.
Yeah.
What kind of things would you do on your free days or time off?
Do you know, sometimes I feel that I have lost myself a little bit in being a politician. So, you know, when you're sitting and you've got that free time, you're like,
what do normal people do?
And there's nearly a pressure on you to do something just so that you haven't wasted that time that's so precious. But, you know, I found myself probably just being at home with Indy and my husband, and just enjoying that family time in that space. And, you know, we like to get out and about. We like to, you know, show her things. And she's at that really incredible age where she's just so interested in everything.
And everything's so fun now. Yeah. And she's starting to have like wee money conversations with you.
Oh, she's incredible. You know, she says things, and, you know, and it really makes you realise how kids pick up on things that you haven't realised.
Oh, it's crazy.
You know, she can count to 10. And
that's amazing.
You know, there was something on television last night. She goes,
I know. They're so smart.
Yeah, they really are.
Is she at a creche or anything, or
no, not yet?
No.
Hopefully she will, because I would like to get her out, you know, amongst other kids and stuff. But no, my mum's very good at looking after her. So.
Oh, that's great. My son, I had him in like a private creche from when he was 9 months. I had to go back to work. I was only working 16 hours a week. It killed me. But again, he did learn so much. You know, one day he started drinking out of a cup, and I was like,
where did that go?
But this is good because he's being surrounded by babies his age, whereas he is my one and only, so I was doing everything for him. Then what advice would you give to working mums who are finding it hard to kind of balance everything and are juggling everything?
Do you know, years ago when I started in politics, someone asked me about my future and what I wanted, and I said, well, I do think I want a family and I want a child, but I would also like to have a successful career, and I would like to do good things within politics. And that person at that time told me I couldn't have both. And I suppose my advice to women now is you can.
Yes, that's what I was about to say. That person's totally wrong. That said that to you. Was it a male or a female?
It was a woman.
Oh, it was a woman. It was a woman. That's interesting.
Yeah, it is. And to be fair, at that point, and that's probably 10 years ago, I do think the space was different, and I think how even women in politics was viewed was different, and the conversations that we're having even now were different. You know, and, you know, I think we can speak very negatively about the world today, but equally I've seen a lot of really positive change, particularly for women. And it is about speaking about these things to normalize them. But I'm not saying that you can have it all, but then what that means is very different to each individual person. You can certainly have what you want to have, but it is about, I suppose, creating those boundaries and prioritising, and I suppose knowing your capacity too. And I don't mean knowing where to stop. It's about knowing what's important here, and there, you know, and if anyone's worried that they can't do something, the ability of women to do it is their superpower, and you will find a way, and you will make it work. And don't have the mum guilt, don't have all of those things, because there's to me there's an inherent natural thing within us as women that makes it work, because we just do.
So we really do. I mean, hats off to women. We're amazing.
Go for it.
So coming since I've started doing the podcast, I have had the privilege of meeting so many amazing women who have amazing careers, and they're also amazing mommies, you being now added to that list as well. So it has shown that it can be done. It is hard, very, very hard. We're tired all the time. Absolutely. We want to sleep, we want to cry sometimes, but we can always do it as well. So what is something that you wish new mothers or first-time mothers knew?
Probably all the things that you don't read about in the textbooks. The funny noises they make at night. Like, no one tells you about that. So, when you do have anxiety, you're waking up thinking, oh my gosh, what's going on, what's wrong. Even, I apparently this was a thing, but, I used to wake up in the middle of the night looking for her in the bed sheets.
In your bed sheets?
Yeah, in my bed sheets. So I used to tear the bed apart. And I'd done this about 3 or 4 times. And I was like, Auntie, where's the baby? Where's the baby? He says, she's in the crib.
Right, okay.
And I voiced this to someone, oh my God, I did the same thing. So I think it's about the things that you think are not normal or other people are not experiencing, they probably are.
Yeah.
And, so talk to people, because, I got every book. I read every, everything going in terms of the internet and Google. And none of that prepared me for, the bits that actually, when you talk to people and other mothers, are actually quite normal. So I think find your community, if you like, in terms of that, and recognise that you're not the only one going through it.
No.
And I suppose stay off Google too.
Yes, Google is awful. I mean, I Googled your name and it told me I had 2 days to live. It's just it is hard. Everyone tells you to stay off Google, but when at the beginning that I had my son, I never really went to any of the the groups, the mother and baby groups, and I think maybe I should have, and that would have really helped me then, because I would have been speaking to other mums, and maybe I would have thought, right, no, okay, that this is normal. And
I wouldn't even necessarily say the groups, and the groups are great if that's your thing, but I didn't put my pressure on myself to go to those groups either, because when I did go to some of those groups, I felt that everybody was trying to prove themselves a little bit, and I find that a little bit challenging, too. For me, it's nearly chatting to people, in your circle, or other your friends and your family, people that you can trust.
But it has to be people who had children.
Yeah,
like absolutely. You can't have this conversation with someone who doesn't.
Absolutely.
Because they would be like, oh, it's grand, sure, they're all like that. And you're like, but they're not this bad. No one told me that this was going to happen. No one told me that I would have these thoughts, and it would be so hard. And the nap times, and I used to listen to people and they'd be like, oh, my baby slept 8 hours, and I'd be like, well, mine slept 8 minutes. So help. Exactly. So again, opening up the conversation.
I think just talking, and the key to it is just, I think, talking.
Aye. So what is the 5-year plan for you, if you have a 5-year plan?
Gosh, I'm not sure if I do.
How long do we have?
I'm not sure. Like if we're talking about work, I have 2 years until the next election. Okay. I've kind of made peace with whatever that outcome will be. I think one of the hardest parts of being a politician is it doesn't really matter how hard you work, how good you are, how capable you are, or anything. It really comes down to if people vote for you or they don't. And that can be challenging because particularly in Northern Ireland, people aren't necessarily voting for you for the reasons that I've outlined that I'm a politician. I hope they do, and because ultimately I think that's what we need from all our politicians. But, so I've kind of made peace with the reality of maybe not getting elected again in a couple of years. But equally, I'm keen to get re-elected again. I'm fairly confident that, that I should. So I'm kind of just, in this job, you kind of work from election to election.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to do the best I can in the 2 years that I have left. And for me, that's hopefully I'm going to write a new piece of legislation, which is actually something I really want to get under my belt. As MLAs, people forget sometimes that we're legislators, we write law. And if I don't do anything else other than what I've done already in my career, I would really like to write a piece of legislation.
Okay.
And I'm writing it on age discrimination.
Right.
So we're the only region of the UK and Ireland that doesn't have protection in certain areas of age discrimination, and I think that's scandalous.
In what sense?
Okay, so if you go into a shop, and this is a really crude, silly example, and someone looks at you and says, I'm not going to sell that to you, you're too old, that's legal in Northern Ireland.
What kind of things, for example? Because this is new to me. So
maybe car insurance, for example, that usually can be one for older people that they may not get car insurance because of their age, and companies will say, well, there's too much of a risk there, and in Northern Ireland that's legal because we don't have that law in place. And generally I think even aside from the practical examples, we often talk about equality in Northern Ireland and ensuring that and because of our past that's really, really important. But actually one of the most obvious things in respect of people's age, that's never been enacted. So I've always been an advocate for older people since I came into this role. So for me that's the thing that I'm going to take forward.
Has this been a personal experience in your circle, or is this
it came from my constituents. So when I became an MLA in 2014, and I got that role through what they call a co-option in the Assembly. So my predecessor had passed away. And rather than taking it to an election, there's an option in the Assembly that you can co-opt someone into the role. So I had worked for him for 5 years. So when he died, he had left my name to take over that role. So I was really conscious that the people hadn't directly voted for me. They had voted for him. So I needed to get out into my constituents and get to know them. Hopefully they get to know me and see what I'm all about. And then if they wanted to vote for me in the next election, great. And they did. And they've done that now 3 times.
Did you ever... So I'm jumping back.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
But you said that you were kind of put into this role.
Yeah.
Did you ever get imposter syndrome then?
Oh, gosh, yes.
Yeah. Were you... Because if what you're saying is you weren't voted, so some people might have been like, we don't want her.
Yeah. And I must admit, I was uncomfortable with it.
Okay, right.
Because I'm not... I see myself as a Democrat, and I do think that we should be electing people into those roles rather than giving people those roles. Yet I was given that role, so I felt very uncomfortable with that, and the only way that I could really make peace with that was by going out there and getting to know my constituents and them getting to know me. So I worked really, really hard in those 2 years doing just that, and I realised that actually my constituency is really active in terms of older people. They're the most active group within society. And they're the ones who had the voice and they were really vocal. So if I wanted to be representative of my constituents, it seemed like a good idea to represent older people's issues. And, I'm a great believer that we're all going to get old. Hopefully it's a blessing that we all get old. But older people have given so much to us. We need to look after them at a point in their future. They can't be just dismissed because, they've lived most of their life. And, and if we look generally, I did a debate in the Assembly yesterday and I focused on older people and the fact that in Northern Ireland we're an ageing population. So in a number of years' time, there's going to be more older people than younger people in Northern Ireland. And if we really want to fix public services in Northern Ireland, we need to take that into account. Because, go to Elton go to Causeway, on a Saturday night, and you could be waiting 2 days to be seen, by a doctor. And that is down to the fact that we're an ageing population because there's more demand in the system. So I suppose my kind of whole, people know me as the Justice Minister, but actually one of the issues that I've really advocated for is older people. So hopefully that will manifest into legislation which will benefit people in Northern Ireland.
That's amazing. So not putting this out into the universe, but if you're not re-elected,
Yes, yeah.
do you have a backup plan for that?
No.
No. Okay.
No, I don't. And I'm okay with that. Like, don't get me wrong, I'll need a job.
But that's a good thing, because it shows that you fully believe in yourself. That not
Yeah,
a big
yeah,
head
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
way, but
yeah.
I mean, you've been in politics since you were what age?
24.
So this is really
Yeah.
all you know.
It is all I know.
Aye.
Yeah, and certainly when you're asked what you want to be when you grow up, I've never said I wanted to be a politician. I wanted to work in politics because,
Okay.
I grew up at the tail end of the Troubles. I remember the Good Friday Agreement. I think I was 11 at the time. But politics was always being talked about in your household. It would have been in every household across Northern Ireland. So, for me, politics is really part of who I am because of growing up here.
Yes.
So when I decided what I wanted to be when I grew up, I didn't necessarily want to be a politician, but I did want to work within politics because it was so familiar to me. So yeah, it has been it's probably always been part of my life. But no, I don't know what I would do if it wasn't. I'm sure I would stay within that sphere, the public policy sphere. But equally, a few years ago, before I became an MLA, I started a master's in communication.
Okay.
I really enjoy that. I like.
Sorry to interrupt. You had 2 masters?
Well,
or two bachelors, was it?
I've an undergrad in politics and I have a master's in Irish politics. And then I started a second master's in political communication, but I never finished it because
life
took over. Yeah, and I'm good with that too. Yeah.
Aye. Yeah. So because obviously I've had to do a lot of research on you because I don't know a lot about the politics that I don't know about. And I can just see from, your speeches that you are very passionate about the 5 key points that you stand by, and now your new one, which is the age discrimination. So, you can tell that you genuinely do have a really good heart, and you really do just want the best for the people, which is great. So just thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for being so open and honest as well, and allowing other women to open up and have this conversation. And also thank you so much for coming on to my podcast.
It's been my pleasure.
I have been so excited. Thank you so much. It was so lovely
and thank
to
you for
meet
what you're doing.
Thank you. I'm loving it, and it's so well received as well at the minute. So
it is
all going good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Let us.
Hey.